For over a century, Black Greek letter organizations, BGLOs, have stood as pillars of leadership, community, and cultural pride within the African American experience. From their humble beginnings on college campuses to their profound impact on civil rights and societal advancement, these esteemed fraternities and sororities have shaped generations. Yet, like many institutions shrouded in tradition and symbolism, they've become fertile ground for misconception. Today, we're diving deep into the top 10 myths surrounding BGLOs, separating fact from fiction and honoring their remarkable legacy, using real history, real scholarship, and the voices of those who study Black Greek life. The sources of these myths come from the secrecy and unknowns of the BGLO. Fraternal societies have long operated under a swath of secrecy, with their activities hidden from the general public. In recent times, social media has amplified conspiracy claims, fueled gaslighting, and circulated membership denunciation stories that propagate a crucial question: are they true? To understand the myths, we first have to understand the truth. Black Greek letter organizations, or BGLOs, emerged between 1906 and 1963. They formed because Black students were excluded from white fraternities, academically, socially, and racially. Starting with Alpha Phi Alpha in 1906, these organizations created spaces for brotherhood, service, protection, intellectual development, and collective uplift. Their rituals drew from American fraternal traditions, Christian moral philosophy, and the classical symbolism common in U.S. universities of the era. This myth is one of the most common on TikTok and Instagram, but has no historical evidence. This persistent myth often blends Afrocentric pride with pseudo-history, sometimes fueled by online personalities suggesting a direct lineage from Kemetic priesthoods. But what does the evidence truly show? BGLOs were founded in the United States between 1906 and 1963. Their founders explicitly cited influences rooted in their own historical context: college literary societies, Christian organizations, classical Greek academic culture, and American fraternalism like Freemasonry. Claims of ancient Egyptian ritual inheritance often stem from revisionist scholarship lacking archaeological basis. Academics like Lawrence C. Ross stated in the chapter on Alpha Phi Alpha from the book, The Divine Nine, covers the founding of the fraternity on December 4, 1906 at Cornell University by a group of African American students responding to racial isolation on campus. It situates the fraternity's origin in this historical moment rather than in ancient Egypt. Ross clearly frames the organization's symbolism, such as the Sphinx, as part of later fraternal imagery and heritage. Walter Kimbrough, Black Greek 101, situates those Egyptian traditions clearly within modern U.S. collegiate history. Rituals are treated as organizational customs developed within the last century, connected to community, identity, and organizational cohesion, and are not linked to a literal ancient Egyptian ritual lineage. Henry Louis Gates Jr. distinguishes Afrocentrism as a modern interpretive movement from ancient Egyptian civilization itself, and he rejects claims of direct lineage when they are not supported by historical evidence. These scholars confirm no direct ritualistic lineage to ancient Egyptian practices. Cultural pride is powerful, but it's distinct from ritual inheritance. This myth is the opposite extreme, claiming BGLOs are simply copies of white fraternities. BGLOs formed in response to exclusion. Founders frequently wrote about African identity, racial uplift, and the Black diaspora. Traditions like stepping, marching, chants, community uplifting, and line culture are deeply rooted in African diaspora expression. Many BGLOs intentionally incorporate African heritage, symbolism, and pride into public songs, mottos, artwork, step culture, colors, and community programs. The symbols found in the shields and imagery of the Black Greek letter organizations reflect values closely aligned with Ashanti Adinkra symbolism. Many emphasize Sankofa, representing the importance of learning from the past to guide the future. Ideas similar to Dwenemin convey strength balanced with humility, while Aya, the fern, symbolizes resilience and perseverance. Concepts related to Eben highlight protection, unity, and responsibility to community. Themes of freedom and self-determination parallel Fahodi, and spiritual imagery reflects Nyam, symbolizing divine guidance. Together, these Ashanti-inspired symbols reinforce shared commitments to leadership, service, scholarship, cultural pride, and collective progress for members. Adinkra Wisdom from Our African Ancestors by Rosamund Sarpong Owens provides an in-depth exploration of Adinkra symbols rooted in Ashanti culture, explaining their visual forms, meanings, and philosophical foundations. Owens connects each symbol to broader African values such as wisdom, resilience, spirituality, community responsibility, and respect for history. The text emphasizes that Adinkra symbols are not merely decorative, but serve as moral teachings passed down through generations. This work is especially useful for accurately defining symbols like Sankofa, Aya, and Dwenemin and understanding their cultural significance, making it a strong scholarly source for interpreting African symbolism referenced in modern institutions, including BGLOs. African American Fraternities and Sororities. The Legacy and the Vision by Charles H. Wesley examines the historical development, purpose, and cultural impact of Black Greek letter organizations in the United States. It highlights how BGLOs emerged as responses to racial exclusion and became vehicles for leadership, scholarship, service, and collective uplift. The text discusses traditions, symbolism, and rituals, situating them within African American history and African cultural consciousness. Elizabeth Fine's Soul Stepping, African American Step Shows explores the history and cultural significance of stepping within African American fraternities and sororities. She traces step's origins to African communal performance traditions, rhythmic movement, call and response, and collective embodiment of history and resilience. Fine shows how step shows serve not just as entertainment, but as living expressions of African diasporic values, unity, discipline, ancestral memory, and embodied storytelling. Through step, members of Black Greek letter organizations maintain a connection to African performance aesthetics, transforming the body into a site of cultural knowledge and continuity. Marcella Runell Hall's The Hip-Hop Education Guidebook highlights how hip-hop culture rooted in African diasporic artistic practices can be used as a tool to affirm identity, community, and cultural continuity. Hall emphasizes hip-hop's foundational elements, rhythm, spoken word, dance, and visual expression, as extensions of African expressive traditions, connecting contemporary practice to historical forms of resistance, communication, and communal learning. By framing hip-hop as educational and culturally sustaining, Hall links diasporic artistic creativity to self-determination and intergenerational cultural transmission. The organizations use Greek letters because U.S. universities historically used Greek letter naming conventions, not because founders rejected African culture. BGLOs combine American, Greek fraternal, and African diaspora cultural elements. This myth dates back to anti-Masonic propaganda in the 1800s and resurfaced in online conspiracy culture. No BGLO ritual contains devil worship. Early BGLO founders were overwhelmingly Christian, many deeply active in their churches. Conspiracy influencers frequently misinterpret Greek letters, candles, and symbolic language, leading to baseless accusations of satanic practices, even though the same candles and symbolic languages can be found in Christianity. This includes the concerns about idolatry. Many Christian traditions emphasize avoiding practices that could rival devotion to God. The truth, however, is far more grounded. Calling something idolatrous is a strong claim within Christianity. A person is entitled to that belief. Others equally committed Christians may disagree, based on different theological frameworks, for example, distinguishing between symbolic commitment and worship. The most constructive takeaway is not whether a person is right or wrong, but that faith-based objections should be respected without being universalized. An individual's experience does not invalidate BGLOs, nor do BGLOs invalidate an individual's faith convictions. Thoughtful, respectful dialogue matters more than blanket conclusions. Many non-Catholic Christians view Catholic practices involving saints and the Virgin Mary as idolatrous, while Catholics themselves strongly reject that label. The disagreement comes from different theological definitions, not necessarily from different levels of devotion to God. BGLO members may feel unfairly judged. The goal is understanding that some view Christianity with a different framework, not proving one side wrong. One known example of an early Christian founder is Lemuel Eugene Graves, a member of St. Philip's Episcopal Church, who was one of the earliest black graduates at Cornell University and an early member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. Graves then gained admission to Cornell University in 1906, where he majored in agriculture. He graduated in 1910 with a BS in agriculture. According to S.C. Brock in Fraternalism and the Church, historical fraternities and similar societies were often grounded in ethical and moral principles and engaged with the Church, rather than with occult or satanic practices. This supports the view that fraternal societies, including Greek letter organizations, are not inherently satanic, but part of a broader social tradition of mutual support and moral teaching. Historical and scholarly research shows that black Greek letter organizations were founded during the early 20th century to support African American students facing racial exclusion and emphasize service, scholarship, and community uplift. Later editions of African American fraternities and sororities, The Legacy and the Vision, by Tamara L. Brown, Gregory S. Parks, and Clarenda M. Phillips, note the role of Christian values in organizational identity, and the collection Black Greek Letter Organizations 2.0 by Matthew W. Huey and Gregory S. Parks includes analysis dispelling claims that BGLOs are polytheistic or incompatible with Christianity. Ultimately, what is made out of BGLO is determined by choice. If some aspects are bothersome, then it's a decision to leave. If some aspects are bothersome but you can accept it, or see the greater good, then it's a decision to stay. However, the BGLO itself does not engage in satanic rituals as stated by scholars on Black history. This myth often romanticizes or sensationalizes cultural performances. Stepping is performative art, not mysticism. Not religious ritual. It's a form of expression that is uniquely owned and shared, without societal restraint, by members of the Black Greek Letter Organizations, the BGLO. Scholars trace stepping's emergence to post-World War II African diaspora performance from Black sorority, fraternity culture. Influenced by military drill teams, military service, South African gumboot dance, and 20th century Black expressive culture. Elizabeth Fine, author of Soul Stepping, says that stepping is a complex cultural performance rooted in African American history, identity, and community. It involves music, dance, spoken word, and choreography. It functions socially, identity, group cohesion, and can have sacred or community meaning, but in a cultural sense. That it is not an occult practice involving hidden supernatural powers. That it's not inherently mystical or esoteric. The author of African Dance, an artistic, historical, and philosophical inquiry, Carrie Welsh, believed that dance traditions, African and diasporic, are powerful, expressive, and deeply meaningful culturally and philosophically. Movement can connect to ancestral memory, community identity, and spirit in culturally specific ways. But that does not equate dance with the occult in the mystic, hidden, or esoteric sense. Sexual initiation acts refers to allegations or rumors of sexual hazing, or sexually exploitative and abusive behaviors during an underground, or unofficial pledging and initiation processes. However, sexual hazing is not a widespread, official, or a feature of BGLO initiation over 100+ years of documented history. Online rumors or viral hoaxes can exaggerate or generalize isolated incidents, sometimes blending them with stereotypes or misinformation. For example, confusing BGLO practices with those in predominantly white fraternities and sororities. Black Greek Letter Organizations 2.0, New Directions in the Study of African American Fraternities and Sororities by Matthew Huey and Gregory Parks, is a peer-reviewed academic collection that critically examines BGLO's roles, histories, and community impact. Beyond stereotypes and myth, does not discuss sexual acts as part of the process. National policies explicitly prohibit sexualized behavior with all elements of hazing. Hazing will be discussed further in Part 2.